I feel we may have mesmerized them into doing whatever we want now.
Yes. What should we get them to do?
I don't know. Everybody like jump up and down like a rabbit and croak like a frog. What can I tell you? Just- I watch too much anime. I do love that piece, though. Thank you again for allowing me to use it.
It's a good piece.
It is. It to me, it just brings together like your acoustic playing, like very classically, and then the way that it was produced by Christopher Motti, in him doing his solo and adding that just improvisational jazz like right behind it, and just took it to a whole other thing. That
Christopher made it good.
yeah, Christopher's production really brought it up to 1,000, right? I mean, it was good to begin with, but it was
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's a fave. I love that stuff. Hey, Lucky, how you doing? Lucky was just calling
Hey.
me out. Like he says I'm bullying people and stuff. But I was asked to come in there. Like they were talking about when I timed somebody out for like a whole day because they were picking on me. I really did. Like I stayed on it like every couple of seconds, just Tuck went in there and timed them out while I was doing other things, working on my legal, my legal show and stuff. It was a crazy
I mean,
day.
it's the only rational thing to do.
It is, so he was talking about it. So I just went in there. I said, yep, that was me. Yeah, that was a fun day. And I bullied him. Yeah. Bullying is not the answer. Sometimes when it comes to the asylum, it's the only thing you can do. And it was actually the answer. It wasn't like, because at the time, Lucky, I don't know if you were there, but he was bullying everybody. That was his thing. Yeah. Violence begets more violence. This is true. And it's very appropriate for the show we're doing today, the stream. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I'm not really technically a violent person, would you say, Wrecker? I got a hard exterior, but I doubt I'd ever actually do
For
anything to
legal
anyone.
purposes, no, you're not at all violent.
Yes, for legal purposes. I have a violent attitude, but let's just say I'm smart enough not to pick up a bat and actually use it on somebody. Like I actually have a good understanding of the consequences of such things. Yeah, I don't think I'd do it. That lore is before your time. Yeah, I figured, Lucky. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But anyway, so today's uh part of the series is quite interesting. It's,
Yes,
for me, it's
it
one of the
is.
more difficult ones.
It
But
is definitely one of the more difficult ones, and this particular one sort of you you can't really look at it. You can't necessarily take it for face value, or at least it's it's not entirely advisable to take it at face value unless you're like that kind of person that would like
mhm.
take jump off the porch, I believe
Yeah, in other
is
words,
the
lemmings. Unless you suffer from lemming syndrome, does
mm,
anybody know the story of the lemmings? Like they would follow people right off the end of the cliff, like they just follow the leader, like wherever, and they would
yes.
right to their doom. Unless you have lemming syndrome, so to speak, because like they're going to talk about stuff here that it shouldn't be taken literally. It is
Mm,
true story, but it's not a how-to. Okay, let's just put that out here. I don't think, and I can't speak for record, but I would say, as myself, bringing this forward, it's not a how-to. We're not recommending you do what 50 Cent did. We're using it as an
no.
example of the way he did it and how you can actually turn that into something you can use legally and successfully with a clear conscience.
Yes.
Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah,
Like
that's
I
an excellent way of putting it.
yeah, because it is uncomfortable. So let's get to it. Let's get to let me bring it up and let's get to what we're actually referring to so they don't think we're just, you know, talking nonsense. Yeah.
Mhm.
Let's see if I fix this setup too. I'm so happy I fixed this one for you. Oh, I fixed that one too. Look at it. Look at it.
Excellent.
I'm on a roll. I'm on a roll today.
You
All
are.
right. Here we go. The first part is a quote. Make everything your own, self-reliance. Is that the first one though? Really?
Yep, that's the first one.
Okay. When you work for others, you are at their mercy. They own your work, they own you. Your creative spirit is squashed. What keeps you in such positions is a fear of having to sink or swim on your own. Instead, you should have a greater fear of what will happen to you if you remain dependent on others for power. Your goal in every maneuver in life must be ownership, working the corner for yourself. When it is yours to lose, you are more motivated, more creative, more alive. The ultimate power in life is to be completely self reliant, completely yourself. And I would say, yes and no, because that's not always possible for everyone. Uh, I think the concept here of not working for anyone needs to be expanded because
Mm,
you could still have a full time job to put food on the table and a roof over your head, but can approach it in an independent manner to make sure that you are learning skills and learning everything that you can to make yourself self-reliant rather, more employable elsewhere, even capable to learn everything about something to go out on your own sometime in the future. To
I
think that every individual, at least in my country, can work for themselves, it's impossible.
yeah, exactly. And I think it's important to remember. I I'm not 100% sure what the workers' rights are in America. I feel like they don't really protect the worker anywhere near as much as some
Mhm.
other countries, but I know in my country, um, they're to work for someone else, there you you can maintain the same affect of being self-reliant,
Mhm.
by using, well, w- sort of a harsh way of putting it, but using legal means to maintain your job position.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if you have the same ability to do that in America, but
The laws are structured based on the size of the business. Basically, if it's a small company, they can do whatever they want because small businesses, less than 100 workers, are affected by economy, position, changes in orders, immediately. So they have to have more flexibility to hire and fire however they want.
mm,
They don't really get held to the same standard. Those larger corporations have a lot of regulations. I kind of feel for them. This is where you hear all the pushback about DEI, hiring preferences, sexism. You can't make a joke without going to the HR department. Who gets paid
mm,
what. Some people are get paid differently than others. They now require compliance programs. Something I did while I was still in the out in the work environment was to help companies create compliance programs to how they could fit in with these actual federal and state regulations. And they were really just binders that sat on a shelf. Seriously. It's hard. It's very difficult. A lot of times, the chapter does talk about it to those that are following along. The chapter is going to get into the fact that, if you're approaching your job and thinking your employers are taking care of you and they owe you something, you're approaching it wrong because they're not in it for you. I don't
no,
care how nice your boss is. Your boss is not there for you. Your boss is there to make money. He's there
hmm
thinking about what he needs and his goals and how he's going to get through everything. And I guess the moral of the chapter at the end, I hate to get to the end before the beginning, but just so that when we talk about this difficult stuff, you know where we're coming from. The goal is to approach it like you're the boss, even when you're not
mm,
the boss. Do you know what I mean? Like, keep the big picture, deal in reality, deal in what's going on around you, and approach it like you are the boss. Okay, make sure
yeah,
you're learning and moving forward in accomplishing. Be boss of yourself, even though you're working for somebody else. Does that make sense? Like, I don't
yeah,
want to make it sound too simple, but for me, that's really where it is. That's how you conquer fear. You know, I mean, even if you're
exactly.
working at McDonald's, like, approach it like you're not giving in. You're not just going to work for McDonald's for the rest of your life. McDonald's might be a great company to work for. You don't have to be the fry cooker for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? Like,
I
learn the
think
business while you're in there and
I
get
think a
promoted.
good I think a good mindset is to for jobs like that is to go in and work like you're the one that's going to dictate whether you get fired, whether you get hot, whether you get a raise, whether
Mhm,
whatever happens, go into it with the mindset of you're the one that has control over that situation.
mhm.
Um,
Because there's
so
certain things you don't, like the environment on
no,
whether
yeah,
they're gonna fire 1,000 people or not,
yeah,
whether a whole department gets closed,
mm,
whether the owner of the business decides to sell, and it's
mhm,
standard for a new corporation or a new company to come in and get rid of all the old people because it's just easier that way than retraining out the biased to the way
exactly,
things used to be done. It's just more effective. And I know this because it's what I would advocate for every single time. It saves money, it saves time, it gets things off running quicker. And those things are out of your control.
and
Absolutely. Yeah.
a- and something that isn't that you do have control over is how fireable you are. Like, if they do change hands or if something does change hands and you happen to be, let's say, you're a bit of a lazy worker, well, whoever it changes hands to, they're going to get told, oh, well, this person's a bit of a lazy
Mhm.
worker. If you want to get rid of them, go get rid of them. But if you're working hard and you actually provide a good service for the company, then when it changes hands, they're going to be like, if look, I know you're taking this company, I know you're wanting to change stuff around, but for the love of your company and for the
Don't
health of it,
virus.
don't fire this person.
Mm,
And in that respect, you do have control over a lot of stuff, even
mhm.
that even stuff that you might think you don't.
And here's the thing. For a lot of people, we don't when we have to work for a living, we don't necessarily doing anything that we love. I mean, it's a goal of all of us to actually, if we have to go to work every day, at least be it something that's rewarding in that we like or we love. I say never stop looking for that. Never stop working towards that. But
Mm,
while you're at the job that you don't really want and you're just like holding place, take the time to learn skills to benefit you later. Take the time to learn what's going on and everything, and never let them know that you think this is the shittiest job in the world,
yep.
because that is going to help them make decisions later that are going to affect you. And I some people are going to say, Claire, you're always advocating for honesty is the best policy. Yes, I am. But I also advocate for be your best advocate for yourself. And they don't need to know that. They don't need to know what you really think of the job. They don't really need to know that you think the job is that the boss is the biggest idiot on the planet. They don't need to know that. You need to know that. You need to use that information and you need to better yourself with it, and you need to work towards your goals with this information. But the worst thing that you can do is to let anybody know your true goals and what you really think when it comes to business, period. And unfortunately, job is business. It may not be your business, but it's business. Okay.
Hmm.
Everything about it has that mindset, right? Would you agree? I mean, they don't need to know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And uh, there are going to be situations where you're going to take a job that is 100% replaceable
Mm-hmm.
and and absolutely like at the drop of a hat. It doesn't matter whether you're the best worker or not.
Mm-hmm.
The the You're going to be like first on the chopping block. And that's something that you'd have to just prepare for.
Yeah, and I'm going to use the two approaches in the books to prove what we just said, like as the introduction to the whole chapter, because
Mhm.
then the book goes into the hustler's enterprise. Okay, it starts with a quote from Frederick Douglass, and then it gets into a pretty rough story. Okay, about 50 Cent's life. Remember, 50 Cent co-wrote this book with Robert Greene, so it's all based on his life and how he does things. He's done some things. Let's just say that. Like human nature is so constituted that it cannot honor a helpless man, although it can pity him. And even this it cannot do long, if the signs of power do not arise. Frederick Douglass. And that means that, if you are not standing on your own, if you're not standing in your strength, yes, somebody might give you a hand up. They might say, oh, yeah, well, you need this, so I might help you there. But that's going to wear thin quick. If you are not shown to be capable and able to manage your own stuff, so to speak, yourself, your goals, what you want, and what your skills are capable of, there's not going to be much help out there for you, no matter what. There's not a program, there's not a cushy job, there's not going to be a handout. There may be a leg up in the beginning, but it's going to fall short real quick. And I think we've seen
Mhm.
with almost every program, because I did use McDonald's as an example earlier, because a long time ago it used to be that McDonald's was what you threatened people who didn't want to go to college or take their high school education seriously. I remember my mom saying repeatedly, if you don't get your studies done, you're going to end up working at McDonald's for the rest of your life. She told my brother that like every single day. My brothers, that was their lecture. But these days, let me tell you about McDonald's. You go in there and you get a job. It's at a fair wage. You get a good schedule. You actually learn the whole business. There is opportunity for education. They've got scholarships, programs, and loans to advance you. They have a management program. They want people to learn how McDonald's runs and move them forward. You no longer, if you take that job, have to be the fry cook for the rest of your life. McDonald's has opportunity in those that actually want that opportunity. High school kids can get jobs at McDonald's and be pushed forward based on their grades and their attendance in school. Did you know that?
Exactly.
So that's my point. I'm using it as like every opportunity, even something people think is a menial job that you don't really want, has
Yeah.
opportunity. has
Exactly.
a has if you can work for somebody else and still push forward, because even if you don't want to be a manager in McDonald's, you now get to put on your resume that you have some management training, that you went through these programs, that you took these classes, that you took these seminars. See what I mean? You make
Mm.
yourself, you acquire and learn skills that can build towards what you really want. That's what I take away from this channel. But do you want to talk about what 50 did instead?
Um, sure. Where should we start?
We can start the he got out of jail young. He had lost everything. I'll set it up. He
Okay.
gets out of jail. He's lost. He went to jail for being a drug dealer. Okay, so he lost his clientele. He lost all the money he made while he did that. He was selling drugs on the street. He no longer had a reputation. He was away too long. The business is quick. He lost his everything. Okay, he comes out and he needs a job. You want to take it
All
from
right.
there?
Yes. And so basically what happens is he he connects with one of his old friends who now happens to have a Coke manufacturing gig going, and he gets to start working with him. But he realizes very quickly that he is losing a lot of what he valued most, which was his own control. So instead of allowing himself to fall into the typical take the drugs from the maker and push them on the streets, he figured out a way to make a little bit of extra money on the side to work for himself, which is which I advise if you decide to go into drug dealing, and I would not advise to go into drug dealing. It's not a great job. It
Mhm.
doesn't pay very regularly, and there's quite a few hazards that are involved.
Where he came from, it was one of the few opportunities in his situation that he had. He's already a felon. He's already labeled. I mean,
Yeah,
I- I-
pretty
I'm not.
much.
I'm not saying choose that path. Many don't. But if you do choose that path, at least choose it with your eyes wide open at the risks,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
because what he does next.
Yeah, and what he decides to do to get that little extra money is he got this job along with a few other guys that he was working with. And so basically they all get given a set amount of coke to deal with, and they
Actually,
package
it's
it.
crack at this
Oh,
point.
crack. Oh
Cheap,
yeah, no, it's crack.
cheap
Yeah.
and easy to make.
Cheap,
Yes,
easy to make. Yeah, because
because
crack is like super easy to make. And
this is the '80s when he gets
yeah,
out. It was when it was first hitting the streets as a huge addictive phenomenon. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so Curtis basically taught the other guys that were pushing the drugs as well that how to cut them so you put less crack into they said capsules. I'm assuming they're like
Yes,
um
into the bags. Like
into the
basically,
baggies.
they
So
work. They
basically
all
you're
work for this
cutting
guy to bag the drugs. Right? They're all
hmm,
working, and they're all ex drug dealers who
yep.
lost their clientele. So they're all working for this guy.
They're all pretty down bad.
Mm-hmm.
So he teaches them how to cut the drugs down so like so they don't have to so they're not like giving out as much crack, and in exchange for him helping them out they give him the excess crack that they have left over, and
Mm-hmm.
so he uses that to basically fund his own little venture with
Quit.
the extra
Yeah.
crack
Mm-hmm.
to get himself out of the position that he was in, to
So that it could
become
be
once again
independent. Yeah.
self-sufficient and self-dependent.
Mhm. They call that skimming when you
Yes.
short a product to keep some on the side. to put somewhere else. That's skimming. So basically, he worked for an employer and taught everybody that worked with him how to steal from that employer to create
Yeah.
their own business, which is why I did the disclaimer. We are not recommending you do that. I would never tell anybody to do that. I
Yes.
think there's a better way, but basically,
There's
that
a
was
few
his
better
way
ways.
at the time. and
Yeah.
yeah. Um, but here you're in a lawless environment to begin with. Everything's illegal. You're like, it's not up to me to draw the lines on moral integrity here. It's not. I'm not in that situation. I'm not in an environment where everything is illegal all the time and my life is threatened all the time and I could die any second. So, I'm going to say that I would never advocate for anybody to do that, but I'm not going to say that like he had many other choices either, although I won't condone what he did. I'll never
Mm.
condone stepping. I think it's okay as long as he understands the risk that he took, because in that situation, can you see that he made enemies even going forward with his own business?
Yeah, and to be fair, it makes 100% sense to be doing what he decided to do. You get out of prison, all you know is how to push drugs.
Mm-hmm.
That is your best skill, is how to push drugs and how to be essentially a criminal.
Mm-hmm. But
You're not
yeah,
even gonna think about
but my
being
issue is
working at McDonald's.
no, I get that, but my issue is not the fact of the drugs or any of that. My issue is that he's made himself an untrustworthy person. He
Mm,
needs to work with anyone. At this point, he's thinking he never needs to work with anyone. He's self sufficient. He's going to do everything himself forever. But what he's actually done is seal that deal. It's forever going to be like that now, because these kinds of acts that you do, even in an illegal environment, they follow you.
mhm,
And when we get to the story that we've already said in the first chapter, a couple of years later, somebody puts 9 bullets in him. Can you see how that might have happened? like, I
mhm,
can. He is progressively pissing people off left and right. He's taking care of himself. Give him credit for that. I just the message is make sure your eyes are open to the consequences of it, because you are actually building on your reputation here. If you're stepping on the necks of others to actually get ahead, that's your reputation. And God
yes.
God help you if one of them gets bigger than you and you need something from them one day, because that happens all the time. You
Mhm,
got to have just a little. I'm not saying bow down. I'm not saying kiss ass. Absolutely not. I am not saying any of that. I'm not saying, oh, feed the man, do whatever they say. Like, no, I'm not. What I'm saying is make sure every step you take that you understand the consequences of it and you're still building towards your goal. Because at this point, I think this part of the story actually hindered his future goal. Because then when he wanted to get into music, what reputation came with him?
yep, the
Okay.
slimy one.
Right. And that's my point. Would you agree, Record? Like, I'm not slamming the
Mhm.
dude. He is an
No.
inspiration for digging out. He really is. I'm not slamming him. I'm just saying, let's not condone what he did here. Let's look at what he really did with clear
Mm,
eyes in how it caused problems in the future. Okay.
mhm,
Because here's another story. Like, there's a different way. That's the hustler's approach. That's
yes,
it. You look at it like I'm taking whatever I want, everyone else be damned. Hustlers, empire. That's how it works. Would you agree? Like that's it.
exactly, yeah.
No one else exists in the world but what I want, what I need, and what I'm going to get. And everybody else be damned. That's the hustler's empire. We all kind of can take a peek at that and understand that. But
Mhm,
would any of us sit here and advocate for it? No, I don't think so. Because we've learned what it leads to. Most
exactly.
people living the hustler's empire end up alone or dead.
Yep,
And when they're alone, they're not exactly happy, because I don't care what they say about money cures this and money takes care of that and I can have whatever I want. If you got nobody to share it with, if you have nobody that actually trusts you and actually knows the real you, I'm telling you, as a person of a certain age, that there comes a time in everybody's life that if you don't think anybody actually knows who you are, you feel like a failure no matter what you've accomplished.
mhm,
That's the truth of it. Ask anybody in the older generation that when it comes down to the end of your life, it's not so much what you did, it's what people know about you that you did. It doesn't matter what you accomplished if nobody knows it. It's
Exactly.
nothing. It's absolutely nothing. And I think that's the risk they take when you take the hustler's empire approach to the 50th law. And it's put there as a stark reminder, as a stark example, as one of the most brutal examples that I saw so far
Mm,
in this book. But then we get to the fearless approach, where you conquer fear, but you can use that attitude and move forward. And um, has anybody is anybody following along with this by chance in the book? Did anybody read the book that's listening right now? If you can say, but Record and I have it, and I am actually impressed by the next example that they bring out. Do you want to read the quote from 50 though?
yeah, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
I was born alone and I will die alone. I've got to do what's right for me and not live my life the way anybody else wants it. 50 Cent.
Mm-hmm. And and that's just saying that what's more important to him is living by his own code, right?
Mm-hmm.
and and that's it. And he feels he's going to be alone at this point for the rest of his life because his mother died, his mother was murdered, his father's gone, he's raised by his grandparents, they died. He was young, alone. His grandparents had many people in the house, many children to take care of. They didn't have a lot of money. He felt like he couldn't ask for anything. He needed to take care of anything. If he wanted clothes, he felt he had to go get clothes. If he wanted, new shoes, he felt he couldn't ask them because they had so much burden already. He said that there was love in the house, that he felt support, but he also felt constricted. There was too many of them. It wasn't an environment where he could get anything individually. He clearly
Mm,
felt alone. No, no friends, no support, you know, in an environment that like a jungle,
yeah,
you know.
exactly.
And well, then when they talk about the fearless approach, they bring up the case of Hurricane Carter. Now, those of you maybe remember him as a fighter, and he was at the top of his career, coming in strong, winning matches, and he gets charged with 3 murders. And he gets convicted. And the reason they bring this story up is because of what he did while he was in jail for 19 years, which turns out to be three murders that he basically there is no evidence that he actually did. He
Yep.
Do you remember what he did, Rick? Like how he's
You mean how he conducted himself throughout his time in
I
jail?
I think that's before I get to the punchline. I think that's the important part. How he conducted himself in jail is really important. Go ahead.
So instead of essentially succumbing to what uh what his sentence was, he made a conscious effort to act as if he wasn't even in jail, if as if he wasn't even an inmate. And in fact, what he would do, he wouldn't follow basically wouldn't follow any of the rules, and it got him into lots of trouble. He got put in solitary confinement. Um he I think it said that he got harassed by the guards a little bit.
Well, he did.
Um
He wouldn't even wear an ID badge. He wouldn't let
yeah.
them label him as a number. He always took it off. He would not eat with the other prisoners. He would not join any of the social things that they do. Um, Nothing. He kept himself apart from it all, like he wasn't even there.
And he did one of the smartest things that you can do if you end up in prison, which is read a lot. and learn as much as you can with the time that he had.
And most of that was law books, and he
Mm-hmm.
studied his own case. And the story of Hurricane Carter is that after 19 years in prison, his convictions were overturned by a habeas corpus that was filed by him and some others, basically instituting that they used prejudice and racial profiling to convict him of this crime, that the actual police officers and the prosecutors held back exculpatory evidence that would have not what the jury would have seen that he did not possibly commit these crimes that other people did. um and basically, got the whole thing tossed and turned over without requiring another hearing, another trial. Like, turned over, dismissed, without being able to refile, because the prosecutorial in the police, the investigation violations were so prominent that they couldn't use like anything in it at all. And it was astronomical, and he did that. And now he was an advocate for others in jail or wrongly accused. And he walked out. And the most amazing thing is, he did not sue the prison. He did not sue the police department or the prosecutors. He could have. He could have did a civil suit. He would have won. At
He would
that
have
time,
won a lot of money.
racial profiling was coming under a microscope, if you remember, in the
Mm-hmm.
90s. Okay. And, not in the 90s, earlier than that, but racial profiling was becoming a thing. People were bringing up the mantle for the wrongly accused. And, he could have, but he walked away because it was more empowered. It was more empowered who he was when he got out. And he wouldn't give them the power to make him the prisoner ever,
Yep.
ever. So even when he walked out and he could have advanced himself, using it, he didn't. And I found that to be quite a testament to his character. To, like, you
Mm-hmm.
can call me a murderer, I am not. You can call me an ex-convict, I am not. I am now a man who read for 19 years about the law, and I'm going to help others.
And now, just to be very clear, I I personally, I don't advise not suing the crap out of a prison if you get wrongfully imprisoned. Um, he, I am assuming that he was in a financial position where it didn't really matter because he was at the height of his career, so he probably had enough money to look after himself. When he gets
Actually,
out.
he had nothing when he got out,
Oh, he had
because
nothing when he got out.
no, because he was at the height of his career. But remember, like, his sponsors and people like that were all like getting all of the money.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I I yeah, personally, if I was him, I would have sued the crap out of them. Like, I would have still remained kept re still
Because
yeah.
there was a co-defendant, John Artis, in this case, and not only did he get his case overturned, he got John Artis's case overturned too.
Mm,
In at the time, there hadn't been anybody who had won a civil case against for racial profiling or for prosecutorial misconduct and evidence withholding, because it has to be so egregious. First of all, you have to do it civilly, and they have what they call blanket immunity, for the people that are doing their job, like police officers and judges and prosecuting and defense attorneys. Like, there's some immunity when they're just doing their job. So they would have to actually prove that some of the things they did were illegal, and there were not statutes in laws then really firmly placed against racial profiling and things that go against equality in that way at the time.
mhm.
Okay, because this was he got released in 1985. His conviction was 19 years before that. Okay. They can be complex and lengthy. I mean, there might have been some money at the end. They probably would have settled to get it out of the news, But then again, it was a risk because it already was a big news story. Whether he sued or not, it was everywhere. So, you know, but the only thing we have to go by is the statement from Carter, who said that he and artists primarily wanted to focus on challenging convictions legally um, for others, leading to their releases to make sure that they're not wrongly confused. Um, they became prominent figures advocating for the rights of wrongly convicted prisoners. And they
Yep.
constantly were picking out the flaws in the justice system, which helped firm up the justice system and make it better. They just became activists with a cause. I think they also just didn't want to deal with it anymore. Can you imagine being
No.
tied up in a civil suit for 2 or 3 more years after you just had to wear that jumpsuit for 19? I wouldn't
Yeah.
want to see those people again either, actually, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I can understand that
Mhm.
that perspective.
And it was something that people didn't understand, and even like yourself, you don't, because America is such a litigious country to begin with. We sue
Man,
because
you guys can get someone could breathe on you wrong and you sue the shit out of them.
right, right. But this story is a perfect example of, like, of course he was in a position he didn't want to be in. He's in jail, right? That's kind of like having a job you don't really want to have, okay? But he
Mm,
used it to his best advantage to get to his ultimate goal. He made sure his core needs of being an individual and not being one of the masses and being unique, okay, and bettering himself were his primary focus. And they use this as an example of how you can do that when you're, at least I look at it that way, as how you can do that when you have to just have a job basically to keep food on the table and a roof over your head. But that you
mm,
could still turn it into a positive thing for yourself in, I guess, in how you approach it. In how you
exactly.
approach it. My nan had a great saying about that. You want to hear it? You want to hear an old
What?
Irish saying? Like, it's not even an Irish saying. It's just that my nan was Irish. So for me,
Mm,
it's an Irish saying. She said, attitude is everything. When you leave the house, make sure you pick a good one.
yep.
Yep.
And a quote, well, it's a somewhat quote from the book that I think
Mhm.
kind of encapsulates um why is his name? Oh, his name's just absolutely disappeared from my mind. The
Yep.
boxer. Um
Oh, Hurricane Carter?
Hurricane
Yeah.
Carter, yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Is if there is ever a choice, more money or more responsibility, you must always opt for the latter. And I think that because instead of, opting to get that money, he decided, you know what? I'm going to help people.
Yep. No, that's a good one. And I like that one. Pick more responsibility. That also
Mm,
goes along with if you're in a job that you really don't want.
yep.
You know what I mean? Like, then is it money? Is it job? I mean, sometimes you have to pick more money because you got bills. I get that.
Mm.
But
And
make
more,
sure while you're there, you acquire some responsibility so that you actually are learning something. You take away from it a skill. You learn everything you can while you're there. You keep your eyes open. In other words, you just don't show up and do the menial. Make it more. You have the control to
exactly.
make it more. You have the control to actually make it more satisfying for yourself if you're achieving something. And I don't mean like getting great raises or being promoted and stuff. I mean achieving in knowledge or working towards your goal or something of that nature, even if it's outside of the job. You have
Mm,
control over all of that with your attitude and how you approach it. Eh, your boss is not there to make your life easy. Your boss is not there to give you everything that you want. Your employer is not there to give you the best case scenario. Like, you have to take the reins to make all of that. You have to have your eyes open in the reality. Remember back to chapter 1, the
mm,
realism, the reality of the situation. I have to work for a living. How can I make working for a living work for me?
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
because we're all like that. We can't
Mhm.
all be entrepreneurs, like and take millions of dollars and start our own businesses, or even get loans to start. I mean, it's possible in America, get a loan to
Just
start a
a
business.
small loan of $1 million, right?
A couple of million now. You can't even do a really good, successful out. Well, that's the business part of me talking like you, but I mean, you need a lot. But there are
Yeah.
ways. There are loans. Every state has a loan. There's opportunity everywhere. But along with that comes the stress of the money coming in and out, going up and down, not being steady. Working for yourself is great for independence and being your own person, but nobody's going to tell me it doesn't have just as enough, if not more, stress than working in a
Oh,
job that you don't
100%.
want. you know, it's just a matter of what weight you put on things. If you really require that independence, then do it. It's worth it. You're going to feel more satisfied with it. But do it with your eyes wide open, with the reality of the situation in realism. Like chapter one had said, that's the important thread we have to keep, you know, coming across on. Okay. So here are what the book outlays as the keys to fearlessness in these positions when you find yourself in a position that is not the ultimate of what you want. It's not your end goal. It's not what you pictured you'd be doing for the rest of your life. How do you turn it around? How do you make that into you having total control of everything that's going on for you? You know, in if they're going to use a Max Stirner quote to open it. I am owner of my might, and I am so when I know myself as unique. Dealing with the individual, keeping yourself as yourself the whole time. And well, I guess the best thing to do, Rec, is talk a little bit about the steps one by one. Do you want to start with the first one?
Yeah. Um, reclaim dead time. And
The 19 years that Hurricane Carter studied to be a lawyer.
yes, that is I mean,
A perfect example. He got several honorary law degrees when he got out because
yes.
he knew that much about the law. Yes, isn't that nice? Yeah.
Um, so basically, the idea of reclaiming dead time is when you are in a position that is less than ideal for yourself, find a way eh, find a way to use what is happening to your advantage. For instance, say you're in a a factory and you're doing some kind of menial task.
Hmm.
Well, while you're in the factory, it's also possible to learn how certain processes work, how how you can observe how they've logically put stuff together, and say you're wanting to um say an idea for yourself is to create your own little business of some sort that requires making something. You're now in a position where you can clearly observe how something is being made in a logical progression.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of just doing your task that and I I have come from a factory position at one point, so I know how draining it can be. Um,
Hmm.
and it sucks, it does.
It
But,
does, but at least understand how the process that you're doing fits into the whole
yeah,
process can
um,
actually give you a lot of knowledge on how, going from step A to step Z, which a
yeah,
lot of people, if you haven't like had to formulate
well,
papers for college or do anything like that, that's not something we automatically know how to
no.
do.
And in my
Yeah.
position, I'd started off as a fitter and turner, and then I went into doing the fiberglassing.
Mm-hmm.
And so the skills that I took away from that, that I can use now if I wanted to, is um, I know how to run a lathe pretty comfortably. I can't do crazy stuff with it, um, but I wouldn't be afraid to walk up to a lathe and run it um, one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I wanted to, if I could get my hands on a lathe, I could absolutely start making stuff with a lathe
Mm-hmm.
to start my own little business. Or when I got moved into the fiberglassing, I learned how fiberglass works and actually not only how it works in general, but how I can use it, how I can make fiberglass work with just my hands.
Mm-hmm.
A lot, I mean, there's a lot of fiberglassing stuff is hand done, but often they use a lot of machines and stuff. But I was in a position where I had to do everything, essentially everything by hand except for the spraying.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned a lot of the things, the ways that it works, the ways
Yeah. Yeah.
and all
Not
the
only
little
that,
pitfalls that I might run into.
that the conditions required for the fiberglass to work, regardless of what you were doing. I remember like a lot of that, which is a valuable
Mm,
thing. Like if you're coming into a new factory or something and things aren't going right, you'd have
yep,
answers as to why things weren't working the way that they should. You know, and
exactly.
and that's just an example of a job that, like, you didn't want that job. That wasn't you didn't like lay in bed at night and dream about doing that for a living or anything.
Uh,
But
the the smell of fiberglass fumes in the
I
morning.
I should have known I shouldn't set you up like that way, that you would pull the rug out from under me, but still, because you're such a menace. But you know what I mean. Like,
No,
but
I didn't want it
point,
at
the
all.
point, the point being that it wasn't an aspiration of yours, but you took valuable stuff away from it.
Mm,
Even just one of the most valuable lessons that we take away from jobs like these, that we don't really want but we have to do, is the fact that we are going to get through it. In just being able to get ourselves, having control of ourselves to get there, to do it, to get our mind in the right mindset to do it, to do the right thing, and then to find something in it of value for ourselves so that we can accomplish what we need to accomplish. That takes a lot of mettle, and it takes a lot of fortitude of a person. Okay, because it's so easy to just
creativity as
show up.
well.
Yes, creativity, right? You've got to put a lot of imagination in it to keep your uniqueness and move forward. And that comes with the create little empires. Um,
Mm,
Another thing about that is networking. Build the skills. Make yourself known for something at the company. However, don't be too known, right? Don't be too
yes.
known. Yeah. Don't
Yeah.
don't be like 50 and put that target on your back, because you will get shot. Like
Yep.
you will. Maybe not literally, but if you are the know-it-all, if you're the one everybody's going to, you're going to have saboteurs behind your back. You're going to have people that want to pull you down. You're going to have a boss who thinks you're just too much to handle, you know. And
Mhm.
they like when you know stuff. They just don't like when it's in their face, you know. So it
Nope.
it takes a fine balance, and that can be very difficult. Uh, but you do need to do it. You know, you do need to create your little pockets of information. You do need to gather stuff. But again, that little piece of advice, everybody doesn't need to know what you're doing. Everybody doesn't need to know what you know. You know, you need to build this up, make sure it's good for you. You have to protect yourselves. Your boss isn't going to. Your co-workers aren't going to. The clients are not going to. You'll have to be prepared for worst case scenario, so that you could be self-reliant when you're fired. Basically, you're almost moving through everything as if the job isn't going to be there the next day. Do you know what I mean? That's probably the
Yep.
best case scenario in
That's the
preparation.
best way to look at it.
Mm-hmm. Is that you don't count on it. You don't say, "Oh, it's going to lead to this. It's going to lead to that." No, you take what you can from it. You learn what you can from it. You do what you can. You make your way, but you never give in to it. You never settle. That's another thing. If there's something else you want. Now, that's not to say that if that's what you want, go ahead and settle. If you just want I want a no-brainer 9 to 5 that I don't have to think about. I don't want to bring it home. I don't want to work so hard there. And then because there's something at home you want to do better, then that's fine. That's a conscious decision. And that is empowering. That is
That
you being you, taking your power.
that actually works quite well into another quote that I had written down from the book, which was a lower paying job that offers more freedom is better than a high paying one that without it.
Mm-hmm. In some situations, that's absolutely true, right?
Mm,
The point is to keep your power in the situation no matter what. Your conquer of
exactly.
fear, not being a victim we are all like checkers or chess pieces in this big game, right? But the object is to not be the pawn. Doesn't matter what else you are on the board, right? Try not to be the pawn.
Exactly.
Try not to be the one
Mm.
that gets used. Or if you are getting used, be aware of it. You can't help it from happening sometimes. There's bigger fish in the world, right? All the time. But
Everyone
being
gets used one way or another.
but being aware of it and being well versed in the reality of a situation in realism all the time is sure going to get you through it really, really quickly and probably get you through it with no consequence, to be honest. Yeah.
Mm. And then
Jin
next
says,
one. Mhm.
Jin says, why would I want a job? I want a position, preferably reclining.
That
Okay.
is an excellent position to take.
It absolutely is. It's a preferred position for many, and I understand it. I get it. But
Hmm.
that's what I mean. Take your power, Jin. Get that employment job with a position, preferably reclining. Find it. Find it. Find it for yourself. Work from home so you can push your chair back. Yeah, there you go.
Be a
you know,
sofa tester, a furniture
yeah,
tester.
yeah.
Perfect.
Advocate for it. Are there mattress testers like in stores? Like, is there, you know, like, I don't know. Can you do that? That'd be
I,
cool.
I wonder. I might have an idea for my next job then.
Yes, let's not go there. Mrs. Cassandra's going to be on that like anything, any second now, and this is going to turn into a whole different kind of stream. So let's not go. All right, all right. Let's do step number 3. What do you say?
Okay. Move higher up in the food chain. Um. So in the book, the the example that it uses for moving higher up in the food chain is well, it uses the Borgias, and if you know anything about the Borgias, they're not ones to really try and aim up, but more
Here we go. Another kind of stream. I knew
sideways.
it. It's just bad timing. Oh my
And and well,
God. Okay,
they like to keep a lot of stuff in the family,
they did. If
which
anybody
is
watched, the
never
Borgia
advisable.
series, it really was based sort of, kind of like with a wink, wink, and a nudge, nudge on the 1499s with Pope Alexander VI. When the Pope, who was a Borgia, tried to carve out a bigger piece of the pie in Italy for his son Caesar Borgia. Caesar, however you want to say it, Caesar, Cesare, like whatever. But he tried to secure this for him, but there was a lot. There was the King of France against him. There were other people that wanted to get rid of the Pope and be the Pope themselves. There was the large families that were encrusted all over the country with a lot of power. They did not think that like this kind of nepotism should be a thing, even though they were doing it also. Um, it was hard. It was very hard. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
And he was pretty much they found fault in him because he made deals with like everybody. pretty much everybody to move ahead. He made promises to everybody. He made deals with enemies, and friends and foes and all. He used bribery.
Hmm.
He used blackmail. He acquired through war many of the territories to actually build up his share, so that people couldn't fight against him. Like if you didn't agree with him, they just went to war because he did have a good army. I mean, he was a pretty good general at the time, before all of this happened, and yeah, he had no problem eliminating rivals unfairly through assassins, sabotage, and mercenary ways.
Pimping, yes.
Yeah.
Pimping was a big thing that he liked to do.
Yeah, well, yes, he pimped it. Yes, he did. Mrs. Cassandra knows the story. They did, but that was very common for all the nobles to do. Like, that was what the women of the court, one of the main purposes of was to build a beautiful court and then use it to entice, to pimp, and to make deals. Absolutely. And just they used the Borgias to bring the main theme of whenever you make these deals and whenever people do favors for you or court you for whatever reason, don't be blinded. It always comes with strings, regardless of what they say. Always.
Yes.
No one is
Very
helping you.
rarely will you ever meet someone that does something for you with no strings attached.
Right. And it might be a benign string, but no one does anything actually for you. In some way, it's actually for themselves. And that's the reality of the situation you have to keep in mind. Would you agree?
Yes,
Yeah. So
exactly.
so when you move up the food chain, just just make sure you're not leaving checks you can't cash. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah. Just make sure you're doing it in a way that you don't owe people prices you can't pay or that you're uncomfortable with how it occurs because it is going to come back later. You know, like how 50 did in the first part of the book. Moved up the food chain pretty quick, didn't he? Yeah.
Yep.
He just jumped right off that food chain with his own business by sabotaging somebody who was helping him out and
Who was
actually
actually who he in the book is said to be a friend.
a friend. But 50 actually acknowledges the fact that he never even people who are friends, when it comes to doing what you need to do, they're all fair game. And he really didn't feel bad about it. And that's the thing. But it did come back to haunt him. It comes back to
Mm.
haunt him. He got shot 9 times. I'm not saying they did it. I'm saying his reputation of being like a backstabber in a, step on your throat to get ahead and doesn't care about anybody but himself is what got him shot. Um, because he thought like he's actually putting himself above everybody else. Standard. I mean, you have to take care of yourself. I get that. But in such a way that he's actually causing and hurting other people, going out of his way to do it, that's another thing, you know. And
Mm.
that's the rule on the street. I mean, those 9 bullets were coming at him for quite a while. I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner. Actually,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, but that's so move up that food chain, but try not to get yourself shot. I guess is that it? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
if you
it's
look,
probably the best. Yep.
yeah,
Do your best not to get shot.
yeah. I'm sorry, Gene. I was laughing so hard as soon as he started talking about the Borgia. I knew we lost the show. I knew it. I just knew it. Yeah. If you think that was laughing hard, you should have heard the pre-stream conversation yesterday where we got into the Borgias. Oh my God. But we did it. We did it. I didn't think we were going to be able to do it. I'm sorry. I did laugh. I tried not to, but I couldn't help it.
Mm.
All right. Let's get serious again. I'm sorry. You want to do step
Yep.
4?
Yes. Make your enterprise a reflection of your individuality. So this part talks more about the fact that pretty much your whole life has been an education in developing skills and self-reliance necessary for creating your own venture. Being your own boss, essentially.
Mhm.
And so make sure, and so it tries to, what was I going to say? Make sure that no matter how you move, that your fingerprint sort of remains on anything that you do. For instance, Miles Davis was, for anyone that doesn't know, Miles Davis is arguably the greatest jazz musician to ever exist. And well, I think he's essentially like,
Well, he was such a good musician, but he
yeah,
wanted to do things his way, and he's actually, prominent in actually developing, improvisational jazz. Actually, when you
yeah.
think about it, because no matter what, like he could not stop from adding the flicks, the twirls, and doing like whatever, whatever. He's phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
He by doing what oh, I could definitely argue against that. Yeah,
I'm
yeah, I
sure.
know. I know there's a lot. Okay,
I
so
know
I should
there's like
rephrase that.
there's so many
He's
others too. But
arguably the greatest jazz saxophonist. Sax
okay,
saxophonist?
Miles Davis.
Wasn't he? He was a saxophone player, wasn't he? Or am I thinking of someone else? Am I?
He's a trumpeter and band
Trumpeter.
leader. Yes, and this is from early on, and
Hmm.
there are many others, Liam, and we know, but
Didn't play sax.
They're using this one as an example because most people do know of Miles Davis. He was very popular in the big band era, which is the example that they're doing. No, no, Mrs. Cassandra, a sax player, a trumpeter, trumpeter. Let's just call it a trumpeter. All right. Yeah.
Similar action for some people.
Exactly. He was an American jazz band leader and composer. Okay. Yeah. You know what? I'll give you everybody his wiki for those that don't know, because just because we do doesn't mean everybody does. I don't expect everybody to know everything. But I agree. As a musician, Liam, you probably have a good argument against that. You know. But he did want to do things his way, and that's why they're using him as an example.
I
You
just
know.
realized I got him mixed up with Coltrane.
Uh now there.
I'm
Now there,
that is
now,
criminal.
now there. When it comes to jazz, now you got a name there, record. Now you're talking. Now you're talking
That is
hard.
criminal. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. I will go whip myself a million times once I get off the stream.
Mm. No, I'm not selling tickets. Don't bother to ask in the chat, people. Stop right there. Mm. Okay. Charlie Parker, Coleman Hawkins, and Coltrane were the players. Exactly. They were
Yeah.
all around that time. But for the purpose of the book, they're using Miles Davis, so you really can't fault record for this
Mm,
one. So because he's got it is about book. We're doing a review on the book. We're not having
yes.
we're not having an improvisational jazz best trumpeter, best
Yes.
trumpeter of the era like conversation.
But anyway, continuing on with the book.
Please.
There's um he did revolutionize the jazz sound in the way that he innovated, and he simply stopped listening to people, which brings me to another quote that I have, which is, don't be afraid of your uniqueness and care less and less about what people think of you. And that doesn't mean um that that one's a little bit more complicated, because it's not that you're not meant to care what people think, because when you're starting or trying to start anything, it is always important to get
Mhm.
feedback on what you're doing, especially if what you're doing is for the pleasure of others.
Uh-huh.
For instance, if you were wanting to be a pop musician, wouldn't you would want to do you would want to make your music more appealing to others. So of course you would want to care what other people think about it.
Mhm.
But eventually you gain a innate knowledge in what works and what doesn't. Um who's the guy that's dating Selena Gomez?
Benny
Uh,
Blanco.
Benny
Very
Blanco is a
engaged.
perfect
Very
example
engaged.
of a
Yeah.
musician that um knows how the system works
Mhm.
and has essentially learnt innately how to do it.
He has
Um,
written more hits for people, him and Ryan Tinder, than anybody else out there.
yep.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
But it is the ethos of that quote is what you want to be aiming for.
Mhm.
Um, but anyway, moving on from that, um,
Can I
the
just
next
add something to that a little bit
mm,
before we get to the last part? Eh,
I was going to talk about John F. Kennedy actually.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Um, another good example is John F. Kennedy, who refused to run a campaign like his predecessor, Franklin D. Roosevelt, or
Mhm.
any other American politician in the past. He
Mhm.
essentially created his own imitable style based on the times he lived in and his own personality.
Mhm.
And by going his own way, he forever essentially altered the course of political campaigning.
Mhm.
Um, this uniqueness is not really anything wild or too strange.
What it was
Um,
for the times, like when you think about it, but
yeah,
now it's so common. Yeah.
yeah, and it's this is going to be a comparison that's going to get me flamed because, but y- keep
Flame
it
on
within the
record.
context.
Flame on record because it's about
Um,
context. They can handle it. Go ahead.
the the fact a, a modern mirroring to how John F. Kennedy um, drove his campaign, which was out of the ordinary and outside of what normally happens, is unfortunately Trump, or
I,
fortunately, depending on who you talk to. Um,
I, but you know what? I'm going to back you up there. That is a perfect example because Trump's campaign mirrors John F. Kennedy's campaign at the time.
it did,
Very much
yeah.
so. Because let's just talk about what we're talking about the campaign. Do you mind, Rick? Can I
Mhm,
give him like
yep,
first of all, John F. Kennedy was no stranger to modern technology. Previous campaigns never addressed the television or the media in such a strong way as he did. He put his face out there. He put himself in people's living rooms to talk to them. He used the means at the time, the social platforms that were available very successfully, just like Trump is doing now. Trump is on every social media platform that you could possibly think of. And whether you want to admit it or not, you can't run away from having him in your living room or in your ear or in front of your face like 24/7 during the campaign season.
and
Okay.
let's be honest,
Oh,
nearly everyone in the entire world tuned into one of those Joe Rogan, interviews,
that's another thing.
podcasts.
Used relevant others that people related to help get his message out there, brought in others. He never sided yes or no with people in regards to their politics, but he made a broad spectrum appeal to other people in prominent positions to help get his message out. He had conversations with people no matter what side of the fence they were on. Same thing Trump did with Rogan and with a few others. Although, Trump didn't actually go to MSNBC or the really biased ones, but he did go everywhere and tried to open up conversations in almost every state, and as we go. I think
He went
John F.
to
Kennedy did it a little bit better than Trump on that
yeah.
aspect. But on the next point, they both pretty much matched it. They appealed to the neglected voter.
Mm-hmm.
They appealed to the younger generation that was not voting anymore, or that was not weighing in because they thought things didn't matter to them. So they coveted their certain portions of their campaigns to make their voices heard to those individuals, and crafted their messages accordingly, made themselves appealable to them, tried to speak their language, even though they weren't younger. Here it was, John F. Kennedy. He was not like everybody else, but he wanted to appeal to those that thought that they weren't being heard. Trump kind of did the same thing in comparison. I'm not sticking up for what he did, but I'm just saying they
If you
compare. Yeah. In the
if you
last,
can but they basically did what most people don't what most politicians don't do. They spoke to the silent majority.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And very much so, if you're hearing something vehemently on TV or in any media, irrespective of whether it's mainstream or alternative media, if you're hearing about it, they are more or less likely the minority in
exactly.
a huge sense.
Mm-hmm. In the last point was during John F. Kennedy's campaign, Catholicism ruled America, and he spoke of it as a proud Catholic and supported the message, just as Trump coveted the Christians in his messaging, to say that we support you and we're going to represent you. So they actually both brought religion into it in the end, and that's where I'm going to drop that. There were just four very succinct, very noticeable comparisons to the two. Well,
Mm.
they made their reflection, both of them did it their way. Nobody could say that Trump didn't do it his way. Okay, he's done it his way. And that he didn't do it different than everybody else, because he most certainly has. And that was the point. Not advocating for either candidate, you know. But John F. Kennedy did the same thing. And the point is that, in going to achieve these things that you want, making sure that they are still a reflection of you and represent what it is you want and what it is you believe in.
And
In
that's
Yeah,
actually an important point, is that both of them, as fake as we think Trump is, they both stayed as genuine as they could in
true.
the perspective of the voter.
Yes,
And
yeah,
I, I tell me if I'm stepping out of line about this, but from what I've seen, Americans tend to appreciate genuine a person who is more genuine more readily than they do someone who might even remotely come off as a little bit fake.
well, okay, I understand that, and I'm going to clarify that a little bit just for my own good consciousness. I would say in Trump's messaging that he has a true belief that he can say whatever he wants to get away with it and not be held accountable for it. And
Exactly.
I don't think he's being genuine that he actually believes everything that comes out of his mouth. I think
Oh
he
no.
genuinely believes it doesn't matter in the end. How about that? That's what I'm going to
Yes.
say about that. Because that man lies like butter on toast. Like, I'm sorry.
And
He
that's
you
exactly why I said
but
proceed.
he does not give a crap because he knows it doesn't matter in the end. And because what really matters in the end, and I can't say this enough, I don't care what they say, watch what they do. It doesn't matter what
Mhm.
they get up there and promise you, you can believe it. If you are actually believing a politician, shame on you. They just want your vote. They're going to say anything. It's kind of like, when you're being love bombed, right? People, men, women, when somebody's being a little too much, your red flags go off. You're just like, yeah, right. You're that into me after one date. Like, what? Hmm. Listen, that's what it's like dealing with a politician. You know better. Like,
When it
stop it.
boils
Deal
down
in
to it,
the reality of the situation. The reality is they will say and do anything to get that position. Watch
yes.
what they actually do. Look at the history of what they actually did. I don't care what they say. I don't care what they say the numbers are. Look at what they actually are. I don't care what they say they did. Look at the record of what they actually did. Like, that's our responsibility in dealing with reality, in dealing with realism, in actually using this book as a reference. Would you agree, Record? Sorry, I'm
Yes.
on my platform. I
What
just got off the
when it
box.
comes to politicians, the thing to keep in mind always, no matter what, no matter how much you like them, whether they're on your side or the other side or another side completely, they're all pigs at the trough. Every single one of them has that pink curly
Exactly.
tail, the dumbass ears, and that snort.
Mm-hmm. And who, Claire, I like this. Mrs. Cassandra's advocating for me for presidency anyway. Oh, look, she picked my VP. I'm sorry, it's not you, Wrecker. It's Mocking Media.
Oh,
Oh, damn. It's the bear and the
you would be
bird.
a dangerous politician.
I would be a very dangerous politician. Yes, I would. Yes, I would. And especially if that's my VP. Of course, we'd be the same person and we'd only get paid once, right? Like, who, like, that's what they say anyway. Anyway, let's get to the last part because I know we're going a little over.
Yeah.
Um, I had planned on reading this part. Is that okay with you, or do you want to?
No, you can read it.
Okay, so I'm going to read right from the book, because this part of the book is for this chapter. They put it succinctly. To try to come up with examples of what they're actually expressing here would be a little much. So I'm just going to read it. Reversal of perspective. We might think of people who are independent and used to being alone as reclusive or prickly and hard to be around. In our culture, we tend to elevate those who are smooth talkers, seem more gregarious, and fit in better, conforming to certain norms. They smile and seem happier. This is a superficial appraisal of character. If we reverse our perspective and look at this form from the fearless point of view, we come to the opposite conclusion. People who are self sufficient are generally the types who are more comfortable with themselves. They do not look for things that they need from other people. Paradoxically, this makes them more attractive and seductive. We wish we could be more like that and want to be around them, hoping that some of their independence might rub off on us. The needy, clingy types, often the most sociable, unconsciously push us away. We feel their need for comfort and validation, and secretly we want to say to them, get it for yourself. Stop being so weak and dependent. Those who are self reliant turn to people out of strength, a desire for pleasant company, or an exchange of ideas. If people do not do what they want or expect, they're not hurt or let down. Their happiness comes from within and is all the more profound for that reason. Finally, do not be taken by the culture of ease. Self help books and experts will try to convince you that you can have what you want by following a few simple steps. Things that come easy and fast will leave you just as fast.
I
The only
just want to add a
Mhm.
little side note on that. I don't think I don't think the book puts it accurately enough. It's not that things will leave you just as fast; they will leave faster.
Mm,
Entropy is a thing, and it is an exponential thing. If something comes to you very easily, expect it to leave even easier,
mhm,
much easier.
mm. Like shifting sands, exactly.
Mhm.
The only way to gain self reliance of any power is through great effort and practice. And this effort should not be seen as something ugly or dull. It is the process of gaining power over yourself that is the most satisfying of all. Knowing that step by step you are elevating yourself above the dependent masses. And then it's going to end with a very good, from one of my favorite prose writers here is Ralph Waldo Emerson. There is a time in every man's education when he arrives at the conviction that imitation is suicide, that though the wide universe is full of good, no kernel of nourishing corn can come to him but through his toil bestowed on that plot of ground which is given to him to till. The power which resides in him is new in nature, and none but he knows what that is which he can do, nor do know until he has tried. Ralph Waldo Emerson. What he's saying is that the corn that is given to you to grow is one thing, the corn that you grow on your own is another. Make sure that the corn that you grow represents yourself, and make sure you keep trying to grow your own corn. It's not to say that you can't take the things that are handed to you to move up, right?
The
It's
best
not
thing
that.
to do, at least at the
Mhm.
beginning, eh, I don't think the quote sort of points it out well enough, but
No, no, but the chapter
imitation
does. Yeah,
i
right. Go ahead. Hmm.
imitation is always the first thing that you should be doing before you innovate. This quote
Hmm.
talks about imitation being suicide, but it's also mentioning less obviously that this is after a certain period of experience.
Exactly. Stopping at imitation is suicide. That's as far as you'll go, right? Fake.
No one
Yeah,
has
make.
ever done anything successfully without imitating someone.
Right,
No one.
fake it till you make it. Learn from it. Exactly. Like then make it your own. I totally agree with that. And I think you're right. The quote itself doesn't add enough of that in there. They mean, don't stop right there. That should not be good enough for you to just imitate what someone else has done. Yeah, you shouldn't stop there. That's not a good representation of yourself or your individuality. That's not your power. That's not keeping your power in the situation. That's giving your power to something else. But using it to learn, to grow, to be, to get to where you want. That's your power, right? Like
Yeah,
you
the
can, you
goal is
can.
the goal is to get to a point where imitating becomes more detrimental than not.
Hmm. And even if you do need to imitate some things to get forward, to make sure that those little things that are individual to you are standing out so they're noticed. You know what I mean? Like when you cover a song, right? Record. I knew we were going to end
Mhm.
up with music eventually. So when you cover a song, okay, like in the intro, when you guys did "Fly Me to the Moon," everybody's heard that song, right?
Mhm.
But that was you guys. You covered the song. The notes are the notes. The song's the song. You didn't write the song. You didn't write the music.
Nope.
You play it, but you did things, both you and Christopher Malte, to make that unique
Mhm.
and individual to the two of you, independently and together, to be a new thing, to be something different. And what stands out is not the covering part of it, but the individuality. You did just enough to make it recognizable as yours now.
Mhm.
And that's the kind of this is a simple example, but it's a perfect one because everybody just heard the song. You know, I think that's what you're talking about. Fake it till you make it. Like
Yeah,
there's nothing
exactly.
wrong with doing any of that. You had to play the song the way it was originally wrote. How many times before you could play it the way you wanted? Like a
Countless.
million. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure musicians in the chat and listening later will understand it, or anyone, writers, in art, in creativity, in anything, but also in your everyday job. There's going to be somebody you can look up to that does it in an inspiring way that you want to learn from. Go ahead, mimic it, do it their way until you can branch out enough with confidence to do it your own way and learn from it and
Mhm.
see the things you want to change. There's nothing wrong with that. That's actually a very good way to get a hit and to get comfortable in the knowledge that you need and the skills that you need to do it, to make
Exactly.
self-reliant traits for yourself. Mm. I think they covered the whole second chapter. What do you think?
Yep, I believe that is yes.
And so we went a little longer than I anticipated because, we got sidetracked a little because I'm
Mm.
a very bad bear today. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Yeah. But I'll try to keep us more on track next time. Is
It
there anything?
happened.
Yeah, it always does. I get so guilty as charged. I know myself well. How would you like to end this up? Anything you'd like to pull it together with?
Um, Definitely. I'm probably going to say this at the end of every stream, but if you have the time and if you have the motivation, read the book.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely read the book with an open mind and not and without prejudice.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a book of concepts and not
Mm.
necessarily a step by step.
No,
Like, yeah,
it's definitely not a self-help book.
mm-mm. It's a story. It's a
Mm.
story with context and lessons. And that's why I'm happy to do it. And we'll be back, won't we, next week?
Mm-hmm.
Cha-
That
with
we will.
chap with chapter 3. Thank you everybody for joining us. We appreciate you joining us in chat, and we appreciate the views after. And just like I'm going to do the YouTube things, just like every time, you got something to tell us, good or bad, please hit the comment section. We can't get better if we don't hear from you. We don't know what you like, what you don't like. And constructive criticism is welcome. And
Exactly.
and also I like the algorithm. I want to be in the algorithm. I'm going to use the 50th law to get in the algorithm and ask you all to join me by liking, sharing, and subscribing. It's free. Do it. Just push the buttons. Thank you. Okay. How was that, Rec? Am I learning my lessons well?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to hit the out button. You good? You good?
Yep.
All right. Hey,
See ya.
see you all Sunday. Those that want to join us for a Sunday hang, I think that's what we're going to do tomorrow before we get back to trial business. But for this series, the 50th Law, we'll do chapter 3 next Saturday. Good night, everyone.
Night.